If you have a complaint, then you can leave. This is our home. I finally lost my temper at the person in front of me who was yelling at me. Sheesh, I really did it, didn't I? I thought so for a moment, but I had no regrets. My name is Susan, 33 years old. I live with my husband John and our 3-year-old daughter, Lily. I started working part-time at a local supermarket after Lily started kindergarten. Although my days are nothing special, I've come to appreciate my ordinary life. But for the past 6 months, I've been bothered by something.
Hey, Susan, this is a stylish outfit. You should have been careful when washing it.
The person showing me the slightly wrinkled clothes complained. She's John's sister, and my sister-in-law. Her name is Patricia. She's unmarried, and as far as I remember, she's 40 years old. Huh? I didn't know. It was just mixed in with the usual laundry, so I didn't notice.
I would think you would know it's an expensive one just by looking at it. But I suppose you wouldn't understand, being fond of non-brands, Susan.
When she said that, she went back to her room with a face like it can't be helped. Well, you should wash it yourself then, I said under my breath. It was always like this. Patricia seemed to take it for granted that I would take care of things for her. Even after I had done her laundry, she treated me like this. It was so frustrating, and for some reason, I was even preparing my sister-in-law's lunch.
You're making Lily's lunch, right? Then could you make mine too?
I tried to refuse, suggesting she should make her own, but she responded,
I've never made lunch before. My mom always did it for me.
I don't care. I'm not your mother. Then, this stupid sister-in-law took my daughter's lunchbox to the office without permission, which I made early in the morning. I lost it. Couldn't you tell it was Lily's? Just by looking at it? Lily was crying this morning because her favorite lunchbox was missing. Despite how angry I was, she just responded,
I thought you'd made it for me since it was on the table. I'm sorry.
With a silly grin on her face. What's with that face? It's not cute at all, I thought to myself. By the way, her review of the lunch was,
I'm on a diet, so it was just the right amount.
She could at least say thank you. I suggested she could just buy lunch, but she replied she didn't want to because it would be unbalanced nutritionally. As a sort of revenge, I made her lunches filled with frozen meals a few times, but it didn't seem to bother her. Basically, it was clear she just wanted to make her own life easier. Enough! Half a year ago, we began living in this house with my in-laws. Since we moved here, I've found myself getting irritated much more frequently. Even if I told John about it, he didn't seem to take it seriously, while I was begrudgingly doing the housework.
Susan, I'm sorry.
My mother-in-law, leaning on her cane, started a conversation. She had lost her husband about a decade ago and had continued to work as a full-time employee since then. She had slightly high blood pressure, which led to her suffering a stroke one day. Fortunately, she survived, but was left with a slight paralysis on her right side. With the help of a cane and leg brace, she could still manage to walk. However, maintaining her job was too much of a challenge, so she had to quit her long-term employment. Now she lives on her pension.
It's a real lifesaver that you've come. Thank you, Patricia. As always, I apologize, she said.
My mother-in-law had no language impairment and could converse like this. Whenever my sister-in-law and I had a disagreement, she would always apologize to me like this. To my selfish sister-in-law, my mother-in-law would regularly say,
Enough is enough. You should leave right now.
But my sister-in-law would just respond with,
Huh? Why? It's convenient to live here since it's close to work. Okay, I'll consider it.
Showing that she wasn't really taking it seriously. My mother-in-law was never an old-fashioned bully, and she would always thank me. Even my daughter Lily was very attached to my mother-in-law. When I first heard that my mother-in-law had collapsed, I could never have imagined that things would turn out this way. Because my sister was also living with her, and even though my sister-in-law had a job, my mother-in-law was neither bedridden nor needed 24-hour nursing care. I just thought I'd drop by once in a while and lend a helping hand if needed. But my husband thought differently. "Let's move into my parents' house." My husband told me this after my mother-in-law's collapse, and after a day at work. "What?" Caught by surprise, I stared at him open-mouthed, and he said, "I've already contacted the real estate agent, and we'll terminate the lease at the end of next month." You can't just spring this on me, and moving in together all of a sudden? Wouldn't your mother dislike that? I was shocked and told him so. Despite what I said, my husband said, "It'll be fine, and it's my childhood home after all. I'll be comfortable there, and I know my mom would be happy living with her son and granddaughter." How easygoing could he be? "Well, it might be fine for you, John, since it's your childhood home." "Lily, you'd like to live with Grandma, right?" Asked this by my husband. Our innocent daughter answered,
"Yes, Lily loves Grandma."
At that time, I didn't think my sister-in-law would be so terrible, and I seriously thought it would be tough to leave my mother-in-law to Patricia. Patricia must have a tough time handling it all alone. "Let's all pitch in and help until things settle down," I told my husband. In response to my words, my husband replied, "Huh? Help out? Well, yeah, sure." His response was vague, and I wasn't sure if he understood or not. And that's how things went. And before we knew it, we had moved into my husband's family home. As I expected, my mother-in-law had a complicated expression on her face on the first day we moved in.
"I'm really fine, you know. Susan, suddenly moving in? You must have disliked it, right?"
She told me with an indescribable expression on her face. Upon hearing those words, I immediately knew that my husband had made the decision to move in with his mother against her will. But there is such a thing as getting used to circumstances. And despite our initially stiff interactions, my mother-in-law and I gradually became amiable through continued conversations. She willingly helped with dinner and the household chores, saying it was sort of like therapy. My parents' house is far away from the center, and I was deeply moved. My mother and I used to cook together like this. It's kind of nostalgic.
"Lily will help too."
Ever since she started attending kindergarten, my daughter Lily's vocabulary has grown. She plays with a lot of her friends, and her appetite has significantly increased. She's become more assertive recently, and when her favorite clothes are in the wash or she dislikes her hairstyle, she often has a sulky expression. Even that behavior is cute, and I can tell she's becoming more independent.
"I'm taking a day off from kindergarten today."
Even when she puts on a sulky face.
"Oh, Lily, you're looking super cute today, just like a princess."
When told this by her grandmother, she'd often perk up and cheerfully go to kindergarten. My self-centered husband and sister-in-law Patricia continued to be a source of concern, but I began to think that life at my in-laws might not be so bad. I never imagined what would happen next. "Hey, since we started living in my childhood home, you should increase my allowance." One day, my husband actually said this. I didn't quite understand what he meant. "Huh? What do you mean? It's hard to understand." As I said this, my husband looked puzzled and said, "Well, we're living here now, so we're not paying rent or utility bills, right? So you can give that to me as my allowance." He said something stupid like that. Moreover, my husband said it was strange that his allowance remained unchanged, even though our household income should have increased since I started working part-time. "We've come back to my original home, and everything is free." He even said that. What? Free? What's he talking about? Thinking to myself. Was it me, or was my husband crazy? I really couldn't understand what he was saying. If I had to say, I was confident it was my husband who was being ridiculous. Well, it's true that this is your mother's house, but we're living here and we often pay for groceries and daily necessities. The house we lived in was owned by my mother-in-law and had already been paid off by my late father-in-law. It was now her property. I believed that the utilities in the home maintenance fund, property tax, and fire insurance were paid by my mother-in-law and sister-in-law Patricia. Since I do most of the shopping, groceries and daily necessities are calculated from our household budget. For this, my mother-in-law would say apologetically after shopping, "How much was it? Let me pay it this time." But I refused. Sure, our expenses may have decreased a bit compared to when we were renting. But the addition of 2 more people meant that food expenses certainly increased. And when we could spare it, we were gracefully saving up for our daughter Lily's future. Furthermore, I was making lunch for my husband every day, and he rarely ate outside. My husband, who didn't have many friends, spent his holidays at home, mostly playing video games. Did he really need an allowance? I thought, but I gave him a reasonable amount anyway. I couldn't understand what he was so dissatisfied with. But when my husband John realized that our household was covering the living expenses, he muttered, "Why, that's silly," as he walked to his mother's room. What the hell is his problem? The one who's weird is him, not me. As I was thinking this and preparing for our daughter's kindergarten the next day, I began to hear a commotion coming from my mother-in-law's room. I peeked into the room, only to find John furiously questioning, "Why? Why do we have to contribute to living expenses? This is Mom's house, isn't it?" What is he even talking about? That's what I thought. As I glanced at my mother-in-law, she wasn't reprimanding him. Instead, she was just blankly staring at him, as if it was someone else's problem. Her eyes looked like those of a person who had given up on everything. Noticing my presence, John came over to me and said, "We don't have to pay anymore." He left, seemingly relieved, with a smug expression on his face. Watching his triumphant retreating figure, I cursed myself for my poor judgment in marrying such an idiot. However, if things continue this way, I might end up being labeled as a bad wife who doesn't want to contribute to the living expenses, protesting to my mother-in-law, and relying on John. I was getting anxious about this when my mother-in-law chuckled and said, "Susan, shall we have some tea?" She called out to me like that. That's when I heard a certain story from my mother-in-law. I was about to learn a shocking truth and a certain plan of hers. A few days later, my mother-in-law and I were preparing dinner with my daughter Lily, just like we usually do. That day, we were making Lily's favorite dish, dumplings. Lily was also helping out, making dumplings in her own unique shape.
This is fun.
It's good fine motor skills exercise. With that, my mother-in-law also joined in to help. Lily quickly got bored and started playing with toys in the next room. At that moment, my mother-in-law's smartphone, which was lying on the table, rang. The name displayed was John's. "Oh, I wonder if he forgot something." That's what my mother-in-law said. "He probably just forgot what to buy or something." Since our hands were sticky from the dumpling filling, she skillfully used the back of her hand to pull the call on speaker. "Hello, Mom? Hey, come on, answer the phone properly." What a rude guy. This is awkward. I glanced at my mother-in-law, who was silently staring at her phone. "Help out with the shopping once in a while." My mother-in-law forced my husband and sister-in-law to go shopping because it was a holiday. Just as I was about to respond to John on the phone,
John, did Mom answer the phone?
I heard my sister-in-law's voice. No, I couldn't hear anything. Do you think Lily messed with it? Hearing John say that, my sister-in-law began to say something alarming.
But still,
my mother-in-law and I turned pale as we listened to what came next. Our hands were all sticky, but we quickly pressed the record button. The call ended after a while. After washing my hands, I made a call to a certain place.
We're back!
After a while, John and my sister-in-law, who had no idea, returned home. I'm back. Wait, what are you two up to? No wonder my husband John and my sister-in-law looked so surprised. That's because me and my mother-in-law, with a troubled face, were sitting at the table in the living room, glaring at the two of them.
Huh? What's with you two? You're scaring me.
My sister-in-law said something like that.
Sit down. We have something to discuss with you two,
my mother-in-law said, then signaled to me. I nodded suddenly, and then played the recording of their conversation that I had taken earlier.
Still, I guess we can't get Mom's money unless she's gone, right?
My sister-in-law spoke to my husband John in a casual tone, like she was deciding what to have for dinner. Is that so? That's a bummer. You said you found $50,000. That's why I came here. The worst part is Mom is really sneaky. That's definitely Dad's inheritance. We only got a merely $1,000. Their conversation went on. Finally, my sister-in-law said,
She's so slow, it's frustrating, isn't it? Like when she's slowly going down the stairs? Don't you sometimes want to push her?
My sister-in-law said something awful, and my foolish husband John agreed. I totally get it. The call ended abruptly there. The two of them looked visibly uncomfortable, clearly never having imagined we were listening in. Hearing their conversation, I felt a threat to my mother-in-law's safety and immediately consulted the police. However, they didn't seem very helpful, saying it was a family matter. After the call, my mother-in-law said, I understand how you two feel very well. I've been thinking about it for a while now. I'm selling this house and moving. The two of them were surprised to hear this, eyes wide open. Only my stupid husband and sister-in-law have such stupid faces. In fact, I have been consulting with my mother-in-law about this for a while now. The biggest issue was my sister-in-law. Until I heard about this from my mother-in-law, I had assumed my sister-in-law was contributing a fair share towards living expenses. But it turns out, ever since my sister-in-law started working, she hadn't given a single penny to the household. Perhaps she was still stuck in a student mindset, thinking house chores were the mother's job, and constantly complaining.
It's my hard-earned money. I can spend it on whatever I want, right?
She said this and continued to splurge on beauty treatments, vacations, and luxury goods. If you've got so much money, either move out or contribute some to the household. When my father-in-law was alive, my sister-in-law would get scolded like this. Only at that time, it seems that there was a little pretend to help with housework, but after a while it was just back to normal. She never put any money into the house, and since my father-in-law passed away, my sister-in-law had been taking complete advantage of my mother-in-law and doing whatever she pleased.
But Dad said I should save up instead of paying living expenses. And just because I've started working, it's weird to suddenly ask me to contribute to the household.
I knew she was trouble. Nothing's weird about that. My sister-in-law protested.
I am not the bad one.
Well, I wanted you to save money and move out. After I finished raising my kids, I wanted to have a quiet life. How many years has it been since you started working? You don't contribute a cent to the household. You must be quite the wealthy lady by now. My sister-in-law looked frustrated, seemingly lost for words.
I have a job. Moving out all of a sudden is troublesome.
To add insult to injury, My sister-in-law, lost in her delusions, began to say such things.
Why would I take you with me? How silly. You've lived however you've pleased until now. Feel free to continue doing so.
Finally, understanding my mother-in-law's seriousness, both started to panic.
What about the $50,000? Wasn't that our father's money, Mom? Have you been hiding inheritance shares? I might tell the police.
Such were the words of my foolish sister-in-law. When my mother-in-law fell ill, she must have found the bank book by herself. My husband and I got in touch about our mother-in-law, and the conversation somehow shifted to the $50,000. They probably thought they'd get a share too, which is why my husband hastily moved back in. Their stupidity gave me a headache. With a victorious expression, my mother-in-law calmly said, "That was my money from when I was single. Your father had nothing to do with it. You two have been making a fuss about inheritance, but you foolish kids never let me save any money." My mother-in-law told me that my father-in-law's favorite phrase was, "How long do I have to keep working?" Before marrying me, my husband John lived the same way as my sister-in-law, which shocked me to the core. I remember when we were looking for an apartment, he would ask dumb questions like, "What's a security deposit? A key fee? Homeowner's insurance? Aren't utility bills supposed to be around $30 a month?" I cursed my past self. Our conversation must have woken up Lily, who had been sleeping in the next room. With a sleepy face,
If you do something wrong, you should say sorry, right? Can Papa and my auntie do that? Since you are grown-ups?
Lily looked at John and my sister-in-law and said, This made me laugh, which seemed to upset my sister-in-law, who then said,
What's so funny? You must have said something to Mom.
In response to her, my mother-in-law intervened. Stop it. Stop it. However, I calmly replied. I laughed because I found it funny. I thought my daughter Lily was acting more mature than you. I calmly said, I do the laundry, make lunch, but with no appreciation from you two. Lily can say thank you, right? Why can't you utter a single word, sister-in-law? Are you a baby? I may have overstepped a bit, but my usual irritation exploded into words. Aren't you embarrassed to make me wash your tacky underwear? Where did your sense of shame go? It'd be better for you to move out and find it. As I spoke indifferently, my red-faced sister-in-law said, If you have any complaints, get out. This is our house. Take that annoying kid and get out. At this point, I had had enough. Shut up. You should leave. You? Such an idiot. I shouted with a voice so loud that my throat hurt, but I didn't regret it one bit. A while ago, after dinner, I was watching TV when a segment came up. Adult men and women living in their childhood rooms are increasing. Apparently, that's what they call people who, although technically employed, use all their salary solely for their own pleasure, continue to live at home with their parents, and leave all household chores to them like some selfish demons. The scariest thing I felt when watching this TV show was not the program itself, but the sight of my husband John and my sister-in-law Patricia laughing uproariously at the feature, asking, Are there really such people out there? Whether my sister-in-law was silenced by my spirited gaze or what I said. A few days later, the day came when my mother-in-law decided to leave the house. Well then, I'm putting this place up for sale, so I would like you two to move out by the end of the month. Saying this, she left without revealing her destination. Who would have thought it would come to this? We have to find a house for the four of us to live in. It would be nice if we could find a nice single-family home. Upon hearing my husband's absurd words, If it's just the two of you, wouldn't a two-bedroom be enough? I retorted. And to my words, John laughed, asking, 2 people? How do you figure that? He and my sister-in-law laughed off the situation, but ignoring them, I said, All right then, let's go, Lily. Shall we go to see my mom? At my words, my daughter Lily also responded.
Yes, I'm happy because it's been a while since I've seen Grandpa and Grandma.
She had a smile on her face. What do you mean? He is flustered, as if he doesn't know what's going on. His confusion was comical, prompting me to say, I'm divorcing you. The thought that Lily and I could be pushed down the stairs one day scares me. I can't live with you anymore. In response to my words, he stammered. That was just a joke, right, sis? My sister-in-law, possibly worried about losing her potential maid, responded. Yes, so let's live happily together. John even had the audacity to suggest living together in my parents' home, to which I responded, how can a person who can't even care for his own parents possibly care for others? That's what I told him. Right then, the taxi we had called arrived. As Lily and I got in, I said, please feel free to live your life as you wish. I left my in-laws home with a smile. In the background, I could hear John crying out, Don't go! Don't go! Like a child. In the past, I thought that childishness was cute. However, now I can only think of it as, wow, I feel bad. As for John and my sister-in-law, they ended up renting a small apartment with no security deposit or key money, as they had little savings combined. With little life skills and a reluctance to lower their lifestyle, they inevitably struggled to get by. They should struggle. It's too late for regrets. By the way, the reason that my sister-in-law noisily fixed a lunchbox was because she was trying to impress a colleague at work. She didn't know, but the coworker already had a lovely girlfriend. Her lunches, which she obviously didn't make herself, became a topic of office gossip when they abruptly changed from nice meals to something awful in the lunchbox. I heard they caused quite the stir in the office. Apparently, she was the butt of many jokes behind her back. This was a story I heard from a mom friend who happened to work at the same place as my sister-in-law. I couldn't help but laugh. But she's a stranger to me now, so I could care less. Having returned to my parents' home, I now live peacefully with the help of my parents and my daughter Lily. My ex-husband John spent all his free time gaming and hardly ever played with Lily. So far, she hasn't seemed lonely or shed any tears. She has made new friends at her new preschool and seems happy attending there with a smile on her face. When Lily gets a bit older, if she wants to see her father, I'll let her, as that's her right. I wanted to take care of my family and spend each day without any regrets.
You're seeing another man, aren't you? No, I'm not. Don't lie to me. I'll cheat too, you know. I've reached my breaking point. I can't go on with Stanley, who's just a jealousy-driven attention seeker. I decide it's time to leave him. My name is Katie, a 26-year-old homemaker. Stanley and I have been married for almost a year. While most people enjoy the honeymoon phase, I find myself unable to say that I'm truly happy. I met Stanley at a party hosted by a mutual friend. I was instantly captivated by him. He was charming, good-looking, and worked for a major company. There was just one catch. He was 10 years older than me. Because of the age gap, the other women at the party seemed a bit hesitant around him. But I've always liked older men, so this was actually a plus for me. Stanley seemed to like me too, and initiated a conversation. As we talked, I realized the age difference didn't matter. He was easy to talk to. My feelings for him grew stronger. We exchanged numbers at the party and began to date. Stanley was a gentleman and led the relationship well, which I found comforting. About 6 months into dating, he proposed. You're the one for me, Katie. My life's been so much better since I met you. I want you to be by my side, making my life richer. Will you marry me? His words made my heart soar, and I immediately accepted the proposal. I was only 26, but I knew I'd regret it if I didn't marry him. We held a family meeting and got married. Our wedding was a joyful event with many attendees, making us feel truly blessed. Then came our married life. At his request, I quit my job to become a full-time homemaker. So I put my all into household chores every day. This fried chicken is really good. Really? I'm so glad. Katie, you're a fantastic cook. Thanks. Well, I lived alone for a while, so I got pretty good at cooking for myself. Really? So, have you cooked for other men before me? Well, I've cooked for ex-boyfriends. This fried chicken too? Probably, yes. So, what? I'm eating something you've served your exes? What? I want to be the first man to taste your cooking, Katie. I don't want to be second best or anything like that. He didn't want to eat anything I'd cooked for past boyfriends. I was speechless, to be honest. But I loved Stanley back then, so I tried to come up with dishes I never made for anyone else. Stanley was ecstatic when he learned he was the first to try a dish, but having to confirm this each time was a bit of a hassle. Eventually, I started cooking the same dishes for Stanley that I had made for my exes. Is this a new dish you've never made for other men? Actually, I've never made this one before. It's a little complicated, but I thought I'd make the effort for you. When I said that, Stanley looked extremely pleased and ate a lot, saying, "It's really delicious." It's a piece of cake, really, but I've always thought it's basically a hassle. Turns out Stanley is incredibly jealous. For example, he got mad just because the delivery guy was male. Tell me you didn't touch hands with him. You didn't invite him inside for anything shady, did you? Why would I ever do that? I snapped back, but Stanley really seemed to want me to avoid contact with other men. This has been quite bothersome, and I've been gradually getting stressed out. And recently, something even more complicated happened as we hit our 1-year wedding anniversary. It all started with an invitation from a friend. Let's get together with the old high school volleyball team. What? I'm in. Can't wait to see everyone. A friend from high school, who was also on the girls' volleyball team, contacted me about having a sort of reunion. Ever since becoming a homemaker, I hardly ever had the chance to go to parties, and there were even friends from my high school volleyball days that I hadn't seen since graduation. So I really wanted to go, no matter what. When Stanley got home from work, I immediately told him about it. A party? Yeah, it's a gathering for the women's volleyball team. No way, you can't go. What? Why not? Aren't men going to be there? No, didn't you hear me? It's for the women's volleyball team. But what if men end up coming later? Or what if the men's volleyball team gets invited and it turns into a mixed gathering? In any case, I can't let you go to such a risky place. Why? Don't you trust me? Are you saying you married a woman who's not trustworthy? I didn't mean it that way. Then give me permission. I want to see my high school friends after such a long time. Okay, fine. Stanley reluctantly gave me permission to go to the party. Jeez. It's exhausting that I have to go to such lengths just to attend a women-only party. I never thought Stanley would be this controlling and jealous. Age may not matter, but he's 10 years older. So I wish he'd act with a little more maturity. 2 weeks later, I went to the venue where the party was being held and reunited with my high school women's volleyball team. We had a great time catching up and sharing old memories. About 2 hours into the party, my phone rang. It was a call from Stanley. "Are you okay? You don't have to answer." My friend seated next to me said as I glanced at the screen and set the phone back on the table. "Yeah, it's fine. It's just Stanley probably telling me to come home." "Your husband?" "Yeah, he's incredibly jealous." Once the topic shifted to Stanley, I opened up to everyone about how controlling and jealous he was. Everyone was surprised to hear my story and felt disgusted by Stanley's behavior. That sounds like such a hassle. I couldn't handle that. Me neither. I'm amazed your marriage has lasted. Everyone chimed in saying how strange Stanley was and took my side. I turned off my phone and continued to have a great time with everyone. I felt really grateful for having someone to vent to. It did wonders for my stress levels. Thinking this, I reached the corner where my house is and turned on my mobile phone. Then, like a bull in a china shop, calls started flooding in and I had dozens of text messages waiting. What's going on here? All the messages were from Stanley. Every message was something like, "Why aren't you home yet? Come home now." Or, "You're meeting a guy, aren't you?" I could only sigh. Just when I was in a good mood, Stanley ruins it. As I walk in the door, Stanley is there, face like a thundercloud. "Hey, what's the deal? Ignoring my messages and turning off your phone?" "I'm sorry, but we were all having a good time, and I didn't want to be interrupted." "So you were with a man?" "What? No, it was only women. Look." I show him a photo taken with everyone. Everyone from the women's volleyball team is in the picture. No men to be seen. If you've done nothing wrong, then you could have at least responded to me. Why do you have to turn off your phone? Enough is enough. I came home after the first round of the party, and it's only 9:30 p.m. Do I ever stop you when you go to parties and come home late at night? That's work-related. It's different. Stanley always has an excuse for himself. He's so selfish, it's infuriating. I decided then, if something like this happens again, I'll break up with Stanley. And then, sometime later, something troubling happened. What? Mom! The call was from Dad. Mom had collapsed due to a sudden illness. I immediately began preparations to go to the hospital. Then Stanley walked into the room. "What's going on? Why are you getting ready to leave?" "Mom collapsed. I just got the message. I'm heading to the hospital." While saying that, I put my wallet and mobile phone into my bag. Then, out of nowhere, Stanley made a shocking comment. "A man, right? It's definitely a man." "No, that's not it." "Don't lie." "Please don't make this complicated. I'm in a hurry." "You're just going to see a man, aren't you?" "Enough, just stop." "So when will you be back?" "I don't know. It's an emergency, so I'll be late." "You're cheating, aren't you?" "Fine. If you're gonna cheat, so will I." I'd had enough. I couldn't continue with Stanley, this jealous attention seeker. I decided it was time to escape from Stanley. Ignoring his shouting, I switched my belongings into a larger bag and threw in some clothes. Hey, what are you doing?" "I'm leaving." "What?" "I don't have time for this drama. I'm going to my parents' house for a while." "Huh? Is it a man? You're openly staying out?" Think what you want. Fine, you're admitting to the affair then. I'm not having an affair, but I can't be bothered to correct your misunderstandings anymore. I have to go to the hospital. Goodbye. Hey, wait! Stanley tried to stop me, but I walked out of the house. I headed straight for the hospital. Mom, are you okay? Oh, Katie, you came. Mom was lying in a hospital bed. I heard you collapse suddenly. I was so scared. I'm sorry for worrying you, but I've received treatment and I'm okay now. That's a relief. Mom had suffered a stroke, but she could be discharged without any issues. So, Katie, what's with the big bag? Well, actually, I explained the situation with Stanley to my parents. They were appalled by how controlling he was. They told me it was time to get a divorce. I nodded strongly, deciding to divorce Stanley. I returned to my parents' home with Dad and picked up the divorce papers. After that, I looked for a job. I knew I'd have to support myself once the divorce was finalized. A week went by. Luckily, I was able to get a job at a company near my parents' home. I just found out they're offering me a full-time job, so I'm feeling super lucky. Now all I have to do is divorce Stanley. Just then my phone rings. It's Stanley. Hey, have you come to your senses? About what? What do you mean, about what? Are you still with that guy? No way. I'm at my parents' house with my dad. Don't lie, you're probably having an affair. Could you cut it out? What? Walter? Why don't you believe Katie? Making assumptions that she's having an affair. What's going on with you? Well, you see. Stanley's tongue seemed to be tied, tripping over his words after hearing my dad on the phone. Now you get it. I've never lied to you and definitely haven't had an affair. But if you won't believe me, that's fine. I'm divorcing you. What? Divorce? Why would it come to this? It's obvious. No one can stand being married to someone like you. So you're leaving me too? What do you mean, too? Well, you see. Answer me. What are you talking about? Stanley, answer her. Actually, I have been divorced before. What? My ex-wife left me for the same reasons. You've got to be kidding me. I was completely dumbfounded. It turns out Stanley's overly possessive behavior had driven away his former spouse as well. And he had kept that marriage a secret from me. Why would you lie about something like that? Well, if you found out the reason for my divorce, you'd be put off. And it's harder to remarry with a history of divorce. That's it. I've made up my mind. We're getting divorced. But I can't live without you. Then find someone else to cling to. I'll see you in court. Let's communicate through our lawyers from now on. Wait, Katie. I hung up. Afterward, I hired a lawyer and filed for divorce. Stanley resisted till the very end, but my in-laws convinced him eventually. It seems they only learned about Stanley's lie when I reached out to them. They apologized for the troubles he caused me due to his lies and jealousy and helped me with a divorce. So, finally, I could divorce Stanley. By the way, I reported all of this to my high school volleyball team. They were happy about my divorce, and it turns out one of my classmates' husbands works at Stanley's company. News spread like wildfire, and Stanley's now facing the cold shoulder from everyone. Stanley, meanwhile, has had a tough break. The younger colleagues and team members who used to admire him have started to drift away. His performance at work nosedived, leading to errors piling up. He was demoted from his position as a manager and shuffled off to a less dynamic department. As for me, that's none of my concern anymore. It feels like he got what was coming to him. On my end, I've moved back in with my dad and mom, who's now out of the hospital, and have taken up a corporate job again. My coworkers are all genuinely nice people, and I'm really enjoying my time on the job. For now, I plan to keep my focus squarely on work and aim for strong results, putting love and relationships on the back burner.